Thank you for staying with us. Alexander the Great is the topic, the mystery of his death, his burial, the whereabouts of his body. It's a great subject whenever we talk about Alexander the Great. So many Alexandrias in the world now, and one of them is our Alexandria, one of the greatest cities in the world. Time now to introduce to you our dear guest, Egyptologist Samir Abbass, and he will walk us through. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And whenever we talk about Alexander the Great, I mean, it's great to talk about him. You feel that you're talking about history. You feel that, so the mystery, the mysteries, we're still talking here in the breakfast show about the mysteries of ancient Egypt, and definitely a lot of things connected to Alexander the Great still remain a mystery.
Until today, yes, that is very much true. Thanks, Mr. Muhammad, for the great introduction for this subject. So thanks, Shireen, as well, yes, for today. And I can see the passion in your talk about the subject. And I feel stressed now because I have less than 20 minutes to cover a very important subject like this one. So, but first, I would like to tell you why I'm personally interested with Alexander, the mysterious Alexander. I born and grew up in the city of Alexandria in an early age when I was still studying. I was chosen by the city hall to represent Alexandria in one of the conference, represent the cities of Alexandria all over the world. So that was a carnival more than a conference. And that was the first culture impact for me, where I was face to face with young people from 27 countries, 27 cities, named after Alexander. I couldn't imagine that Alexander, he made such impact in the world to at least 27 cities named after him.
Including in the US?
Including, all over Europe, US, and of course the most important one and the biggest one and the greatest one is our Alexandria. So another, that's put a spotlight actually on Alexander for me, which is a person to leave that much influence, especially after reading actually briefly about him. I realized that he died at the age of 32. He was the king of Macedonia when he was only 19 years old, and he was a king for like 10 to 12 years, which is not more than that. So then there was another big issue in Alexandria city in that time. That's when the Greek consulate of when the consulate of the Greek country gave a gift of a statue of Alexander to be erected in one of the famous squares of Alexandria in that time. And that was a big debate among the intellectuals of Alexandria. Should we celebrate Alexander taking over Egypt and building a new city by putting his statue in one of the biggest squares, or that is one of the setbacks of our history? And that's our conception, that's our perspective today. So how we can look at Alexander from Egyptian perspective, not from an international perspective. So let's first tell some facts about Alexander. So he was the son of Philip of Macedonia. So he was born in the mid of the 4th century BC, more specific 356 BC. His mother is the Queen Olympia, which has come from a Greek background, while his father, Philip, is from Macedonian background, and there was kind of fighting each other in that time, not only the two countries, actually, even within the family, the husband and wife. So he, in the age of 13, he faced his very first challenge, which is grabbed the attention of his father when he was able to control, domesticate a horse nobody else were able to control. And that's grabbed the attention to him. In the age of 19, his father died, or to be more specific. There's a mystery
about his father's death as well.
He was assassinated. And there's still a big question mark. Who did it?
Was it his wife?
Many historians believe that it was his wife, Olympia, and Alexander himself. He was part of the plot. Because Philip, he married a second wife. And the second wife, which is in the marriage party, there is a toast has been proposed for the new marriage from a Macedonian pure lady and to bring the heir to the throne. Alexander was there actually in this party, and that was a very big violation for him, for Alexander, and for his mother as well, which is dreamed that her son will be the heir to the throne.
So that part of history can be confirmed?
Yes. So that there is
until now, we are going with what happened in the internationally renowned movies, the Hollywood movies that have been done about Alexander. What you're saying so far conforms with the most famous movies.
Exactly. So there is nothing confirmed about that who killed Philip of Macedonia, but there is a suspicious, but it is confirmed that there was a fight within the family, and there was a second marriage, and there was a new heir to the throne, and that was something which is will not be a good future for Alexander and his mother. So, in the age of 19 or 20, he led the most sophisticated army at that time, army raised by his father. So in non-stop campaign, and this non-stop campaign led him all across Asia, Europe first, and then Asia, and to Egypt as well, which is controlling or conquering most of the known world in that time. Challenged the Persian, which is the biggest empire, and that was the biggest army in that time, and he managed to defeat them, and until he managed, not himself, but their king, the king of the empire, to be killed as well. So, and after 10 years of continuous fight, which is his soldiers get very exhausted and tired, and they stopped following his rules anymore, and that's why he ended into a depression, and that will explain how he died later on. So he came to Egypt as well, and he conquered Egypt. Egypt in that time was controlled by the Persians, and for the kind of how Egypt or how Alexander controlled Egypt, that could be another episode. How he corrupted the Egyptian culture and political system and religion for his favor, to be introduced as a son of God, to be introduced as descent from the bloodline of the ancient Egyptian kings, to be a legitimate pharaoh, and his pictures and his his gravings, dressing like a pharaoh with his name written in cartouche, it's already in Egyptian temples, in Luxor, in Bahariya Oasis, and even in an island in Aswan called Elephantine Island, his name's written in hieroglyphics there. So these are the facts, the important facts about Alexander. Yes,
so, sir, can you tell us more about the mysteries surrounding his life?
So that's his, actually, thanks for reminding me about that. That's my next topic, about what is the hidden history of Alexander. So in the process of building this big empire, he massacred tens of thousands of people, innocent people. Entire villages and cities has been burned to the ground. The capital of the Persian Empire, and there was no reason for that, has been ordered to be burned all to the ground. So that is some of the hidden history of Alexander. So shortly after his death, the big empire he started divided between his army leader. In his death time, when they asked him who would be the leader after you, because he didn't left an heir to the throne, or better to say that his wife Roxana, which is from a Persian background, she was still pregnant, and nobody knows if the baby will be a boy or a girl. So he pointed to the generals and he said, for the fittest. And that's like a declaration of war, because every person, every general in the army, he thinks that he's the fittest. And that started shortly after his death. That's the start of the war, lasted for more than 40 years, and all of the generations of Alexander's army died, killed, more specific, killed and assassinated, including his mother, including his stepbrother, including his son, including his wife. Everybody involved in the story has been assassinated.
The relationship with his mother, how was it? I mean,
great. It was great. She raised him, and she raised him from my perspective that she raised him to hate his father, because that was an arranged marriage between a very well-educated lady, Olympia, and a father which is illiterate, and he's just strong, had a powerful, and that was the marriage. The marriage was enforced.
He had more than one wife, right? And sometimes there were political marriages.
Yes, Philip, actually having a second wife, that was caused a problem, and that's why.
No, I'm talking about Alexander now.
Alexander, the only documented wives which we know is Roxana, and she's not coming from a Greek background. She's coming from a Persian background. So another thing, which is another misconception about Alexander. So now we have the ancient map of Alexandria, which is that is our Alexandria, and showing how Alexander paid a great attention for building a landscape of this city to represent his educational level. He's ambitious as well. So he was an ambitious man. There is no question about that. So in the process, actually, he was a very brave fighter as well. I think that by the time he believed himself as immortal, like the ancient priest told him. So the misconception about him, that apart from that he led massacres, not only actually, but I don't think that he really cared about the idea of building a big empire. And the proof for that, is what he said in the time of his death. So my empire is for the fittest. He did not put a system to build an empire. So the empire, the empire he built, it was very fragile, and that's why it started to came apart shortly after his death. And what Alexander did in that time is creating a vacuum. It's like a big tsunami, it's like a big earthquake, which is destroying all of the political system in the ancient world in that time, which is give a chance for a new system to emerge, a new culture to emerge. That's the reason, that's the main reason why there is a new culture became very common shortly after his death, which is the Hellenistic culture, which is the Greek culture, from the time of his death until the rise of the Roman Empire at the Battle of Actium, which is between the Egyptian fleet and the Roman fleet in the 1st century BC.
You mentioned, Mr. Abbass, more than once that you believe that part of the hidden, that some of the hidden parts of the history of Alexander is that he committed massacres. But who in the history of the world conquered almost all of the known world and did not commit massacres? I mean, we're not defending this, but
that's a very good point.
Yeah, but
that's a very good point. Do you know one of the very important reasons? There is different reason why he became famous, and he is known as Alexander the Great. So first of all, he was very well educated. Aristotle, that was his private tutor, teacher, and there was many historians had been paid very well, escorted him in his military campaigns, and which is to write down the history from his perspective, giving him the title the Great. Not only in our modern history, starting from Napoleon, and even ancient history, Julius Caesar and Pompey, all of those leaders, they use Alexander as a role model for them. Nobody can do what Alexander did in 10 years. So they use it as a role model, and they start promoting for Alexander as a great, because that will give them the coverage, that will give them the excuse to kill, massacre, and take over lands which is not their own, for building a big empire. And that's how I'll come to my Egyptian bias as an Egyptian. So I feel very offended when a Greek king or a Macedonian king, there's still a debate if he's a Greek or Macedonian, when he come and invade and take over my country for the cause that he would like to build an empire. So he destroyed the political and religious system in Egypt. He built a city of Alexandria, very beautiful, but the main reason of building this city is to take over the wealth of Egypt and export it to the Mediterranean world.
The mystery of his death, we understand that he suffered wounds during wars that he led, and he died, succumbed later from his wounds.
So still, there is nothing being confirmed, but say that he was depressed. He would start drinking like crazy when his soldiers start disobeying actually him, and one of the most important three important theories that he was drunk to have alcohol poison, or he was poisoned, or a mosquito bite and malaria disease. I like the third one. Because
so what we saw in Hollywood movies, they conform,
generally speaking, coming along with
the theories.
The reason why I like the mosquito bite, that because it is like a big lesson. The man who defeated all of the armies of the ancient world, he was defeated by a mosquito bite. So he's
like Namrud in
exactly.
the time of Prophet Abraham.
That's a message. That's a message. So his tomb, I think that's
it's
the last
undiscovered, as you said.
Exactly, and it is undiscovered. It's very early to say that we discover the tomb of Alexander. Every year, almost every year, we have a new archaeologist and say that, we are very close from discovering Alexandria tomb. It's very recent, only a couple of months ago, there is a picture which is brought with me, which is showing a new archaeological site in the heart of Alexandria, in the Shalala Garden, more specific, and they are saying that it could be Alexander tomb. Finding Alexander tomb is a big issue, and most probably, like 90%, it is in Alexandria. But the only way, or the best way to find it, is to declare the central Alexandria as UNESCO heritage site, and start a long plan for 50 or 100 years for taking these buildings down and not renovating any new buildings, pushing the people out of this central part, so we can excavate ancient Alexandria, and Alexander tomb will be found in the heart of ancient Alexandria. Inshallah.
It's we wish we had more time. It's always a pleasure. It's always informative and exciting. Thank you very much, Mr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist Samir Abbass, and we hope to continue to talk about the mysteries of ancient Egypt in future episodes. Shireen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Mr. Samir. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of The Breakfast Show. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more is coming up on Nile TV International.
Thank you, Shireen. I just want to close by saying something to remind the viewers of the third and fourth place game that's going to take place in the African Cup of Nations tonight between Tunisia and Nigeria, and of course the final on Friday, where Cairo Stadium should be filled. The final between Algeria and Senegal. Egypt is still hosting the 32nd African Cup of Nations, the great tournament. It's still very happy to have its African brothers here and wants them to stay after the Cup. So we wish you joyful watching of the games and a joyful stay to all of our friends across our dear continent. Thank you. Goodbye.